Hey dudes, it's Llarold. Patch 11.1 has been going on for a little over a month now. Patch 11.1.5 is coming in a week, and Brewmaster Monks' usage rate in Mythic Plus and in raids is at an all-time low. We've been talking about Monk a lot here at the studio lately, and this really does feel like the worst it has ever been for Brewmasters in the 13 years and change since they were added to the game. So let's talk about what's wrong, why it's wrong, and how Blizzard can fix it. Now I know what a few people are going to say before we even kick off with anything else. I know what a few people are going to say. There are people playing Monk at a high level, so it must be good. So, can you play Brewmaster Monk in Raid and Mythic Plus? Yes. You can also punch a banana to remove its peel. But should you do that? Probably not. So, yeah, there are people playing Monk at a high level, almost 3.5% of the current tank population. Wow. There are 15 times more Demon Hunters and about 8 to 10 times more Paladins than there are Monks in 12 and up Mythic Plus, and something like 3 to 5 times more Pallies and DKs as there are Monks in Mythic Raids. So the fact that some people still play it isn't evidence that it's good and nothing needs to change and everything is perfect. It's proof of the indomitable nature of the human spirit, and the desire to conquer self-imposed challenges like beating Dark Souls with a Guitar Hero controller. But also it's proof that it's just in the game. People will use it, even if it kind of sucks, it's there. It's like celery soda. It's probably not good, but it's there. Why not give it a sip? If it seems like I'm a little frustrated, don't be confused. I am a little frustrated. Monk has been in bad shape in Mythic Plus for most of the time that Mythic Plus has existed. It kind of feels like an abandoned spec right now, and that upsets me because I want Monk to be fun and good, and I think the ideas of Monk are fun and good. So why is the execution bad? I've identified 3 main issues with Monk. The damage is low, the damage reduction is low, and the self-healing is low. But what of the group utility? It's almost non-existent. I guess that's 4. Problem number 1, damage. A big part of Monk's issues is that it has awkward offensive cooldowns. The offensive rotation is also not great, but it's been like this for years now, and I don't think that's going to get fixed in a mid-expansion patch. If I could change anything about it, I think there's a little bit too much pressure to constantly hit Blackout Kick. In terms of cooldowns, Weapons of Order is a 30-second buff that puts a stacking damage debuff on enemies that you hit with Keg Smash or Rising Sun Kick. So you spend 8 to 15 seconds after popping Weapons of Order stacking the debuff up on your enemies to full before you're able to deal an extra 32% damage. Now, ignoring all the downsides of that, enemies dying quickly or moving out of range or you're forced out of range, whatever, just looking at it on its face, there are no other tanks that have offensive cooldowns like this. For every other tank, pretty much every other spec in the entire game, you press your buttons and then you do damage. Why is Monk's damage ramp up delayed? I don't know. It seemed like a weird design all the way back in Shadowlands, and I guess no one ever came up with anything better. But I have right now. You press Weapons of Order, and now you, the person who casts Weapons of Order, do more damage until the buff falls off. What a concept, right? Now there is a small downside to this. In the current design, a skilled player can extend that debuff on the enemy just before the buff on them fades to milk about 8 or 9 extra seconds of added damage out of it. I do this all the time. It helps me do terrible damage because even with all of that extra gameplay, Monk's damage is still bad. This mostly just compensates for the ramp up, but it is a potential loss of power to take that away. The fix for this would just simply be in the tuning. It could be worth about 40% more damage while active instead of 32. It could just last longer. It could have a shorter cooldown. I think a shorter cooldown makes the most sense for being good in Mythic Plus. Another idea that I really like is just simply granting more than just the 10% mastery that it gives you while it's active, like 10% of all 4 stats instead. This would make Weapons of Order a much more powerful defensive cooldown. So there you go. First solution to a problem with Monk. More power in Weapons of Order, no more ramp up. Alright, problem number 2, damage reduction and self-healing. This is really 2 sides of the same coin-shaped issue. Monk has no defensive problems in raids. That is really the biggest positive here if we could take away one thing that is just like straight silver lining, happy time stuff. It is that Monk is actually pretty tanky in raids. In Mythic Plus, it's awful. It takes substantially more damage than the 5 other tanks. It also has worse healing tools, and its cooldowns are weak. This means that it requires dramatically more external healing than any other tank in order to stay alive. In raids, there's enough random healing to go around. That's kind of why it's built the way that it is, but in Mythic Plus, where healing is much more limited, you're not going to be running a 2 healing comp in any Mythic Plus that you're trying to time, this is a real issue. Brewmaster Monk takes about 25 to 50% more damage than an average Demon Hunter, and it requires about 50% to 100% more external healing. So what is a healer supposed to do? Just hit their keys twice as hard? How do you game plan around having to just do twice as much healing as you normally would in content that's already difficult? The answer is simple: you don't bring a monk. In the War Within, Blizzard has treated Celestial Brew like a major defensive cooldown. They've done this for many years now, and the problem with it is that the tuning is all wrong. It's on the global cooldown, which is just kind of an extra annoyance, but your whole rotation is built around bringing Celestial Brew off of the cooldown and powering it up. But in the end, it shields you for, like, maybe 2 Ignore Pain casts if you fully power it up, on a class that doesn't have Warrior's incredible base damage reduction and on a pretty long cooldown. The disconnect between the effort and reward of building up Celestial Brew and then using it makes me feel insane. So Blizzard could just buff Monk's armor and increase Celestial Brew, but I don't think that's enough, and I think that would have some carryover into Raid. Monk's problem defensively in Mythic Plus really is that its cooldowns are very badly oriented for Mythic Plus. All of the good tanks have amazing cooldowns. Why is Exploding Keg's cooldown so long? Why is its duration so short? Why does it barely feel like a defensive cooldown in Mythic Plus at all? What I would do is emphasize Exploding Keg as a real defensive cooldown, while also still being a fun offensive cooldown. I would cut its cooldown from 60 seconds to 30, maybe even lower, and then increase its duration. I think going up to 5 seconds sounds pretty nice. This would turn Exploding Keg into a useful defensive cooldown with real value in Mythic Plus and help with damage too. This also means you would have Exploding Keg available at the start of most pulls to establish threat and keep you reasonably safe while you're gathering enemies. It would be available way more often during dangerous double pulls and become an important cooldown to manage, and that sounds a lot more fun to me in Mythic Plus than the current state of affairs. It also wouldn't make Monk overpowered in Raid defensively, because in Raid the danger to Monks comes almost exclusively from big tank hits, and Exploding Keg only applies to auto attacks. Alright, issue number 3, the lack of group utility. Brewmaster Monk has no unique utility as a spec. That's not a hard requirement for a spec to be good, but it sure helps. Windwalker and Mistweaver Monk both bring the tiny physical damage debuff that all monks have. They can also use Ring of Peace and Leg Sweep, neither of which are really all that great of crowd control skills in Mythic Plus anymore, and that's all Monk has. So what does Brewmaster specifically do to justify its existence? Right now the answer is nothing. The 2 most popular tanks in Mythic Plus both have AoE silence skills. Demon Hunter has 3 AoE crowd control tools, and Paladin has Blanket Single Target Silence, Blessing of Sacrifice, and Group Healing. So Blizzard could make Exploding Keg into an AoE interrupt skill as well, and this would make me very happy, but I don't think they will. And I don't think they should, because I actually think the reason AoE silences have become so strong right now is because of a really bad design decision that Blizzard made in Season 1 of the War Within that affected everyone in the game. They made using stuns on enemies who were casting interruptible spells no longer put those spells on cooldown. An enemy's casting Death Blast, you stun them, they restart the Death Blast and kill your healer. This was a massive nerf to any class that can stun or crowd control, but didn't have a big bag of interrupts, so basically everyone except for Prot Paladin and Vengeance Demon Hunter, and then it was a buff to just those 2 tanks, really. So that begs the big question: should Paladin and Demon Hunter just be the dominant tanks in Mythic Plus for all time? So my answer to this question may disqualify me from having my feedback ever taken seriously by Blizzard, but I would say the answer is no. Everyone should get their time to shine, right? And that change to crowd control no longer putting spells on cooldown was an insane nerf to Monk in particular. If that design was rolled back, and I think it should be, Monk actually has really good crowd control tools. Leg Sweep, Paralysis, Ring of Peace, and even Clash are all good in a world where they function as usable interrupts. They are bad in a world where using crowd control just causes someone in the group to miss their interrupt, and now the spell goes off and your group wipes and everyone yells at you and you can't stagger emotional damage. And that leads me up to today. Now Blizzard is rolling out some buffs today. They were like rolling these out as I was writing this up. So here they are. And they're a lot like slapping a bandage onto a broken arm. Brewmaster Monk is getting about 1 to 2% more damage reduction from armor, about 2 to 3% more dodge chance. So this is like a little less than 5% damage reduction in dungeons where you take 25 to 50% more damage than other tanks. Okay. Tiger Palm and Rising Sun Kick are getting 15% more damage, which is about a 3 to 4% damage increase in single target. Monk is still going to be the worst tank in raids in terms of damage, but you know, they'll be like 1 or 2% back from the 5th place instead of a full 5. Then there's also a 20% increase to Celestial Brew. Again, it's still pretty close to Ignore Pain in terms of its value, but now it's going to be worth 2 Ignore Pains instead of 1 2/3 of an Ignore Pain. If Blizzard rolled a buff of this size out every single week until the end of the season, I think Monk would actually be pretty good by the start of Season 3. It would probably take about 6 to 8 weeks of continuous buffs of this level for Monk to actually get to that point, though. So let's wrap up. In terms of what you can do as a player, there's not really much. They make the game, we just play it. You can cry about it, that's kind of what I'm doing right now. Will this work? Will crying work? I don't know. History has taught me that Blizzard never wants to buff Brewmaster Monks, but I'm willing to keep hope alive, and maybe Season 3 of The War Within will be a great time for Brewmaster Monks. Right now, hope for the future is all I have, because the present feels pretty underwhelming. It is kind of a sad state for Brewmaster to be in such dire straits with Mist of Pandaria Classic coming along so soon, but maybe that's all the more reason for Monk to finally get some attention, and for me to have some hope. Alright, that's it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and want to see more like it, and if you want to support us even further, consider becoming a channel member. Thanks for watching, bye.